Hi, I'm Kendra with Where's Moon Astrology, and today I am talking about Aries and Scorpio relationship compatibility. So, I want to quickly point out that this is going to be just kind of a general read of the signs' energy interacting with one another. So, even if you're not an Aries, but you have, a lot of Aries dominance, or you're not a Scorpio, but you have a lot of Scorpio dominance, this could still apply to you. However, it won't be as detailed as a relationship reading. If you were to have a relationship reading with me, you could understand, the really personal, specific dynamics between you and your partner, the aspects between the planets, the house overlays, etc. This is just going to be a fun, kind of surface level read of the signs' energies together. So, Aries and Scorpio. Okay, so we have cardinal fire and fixed water. This is a really intense dynamic. You have Aries who is passionate, ambitious, and who wants to initiate change, initiate, passionate new activities, new starts. And then you have Scorpio who wants to maintain, fixed water. Fixed is about maintenance and, water is about emotions. Scorpio is more about preserving um, and maintaining emotions that are there, as well as preserving power and preserving um, depth and things of that nature. So, with Aries and Scorpio, the first thing that I can say about Aries and Scorpio is that I haven't had a lot of interaction with a lot of Scorpio dominant people, but I know that Aries and Scorpio can be very passionate sexually, emotionally, and otherwise. If you think about their ruling planets, they're both traditionally ruled by Mars. Um, in modern astrology, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, but traditionally they're both ruled by Mars, which is about initiative, action. It's also about sex. Now, in modern rulership, you have Aries ruling planet being Mars, which is um, more physical, more about the surface level expression of Mars. So, the physical aspect of it, the sexual aspect of it, the purely physical sexual aspect of it. And then you have Pluto, which is also kind of a sexual planet, but it's much more about the emotional connection, the really deep, intimate connection that can happen with sex. And Pluto is also about, power and, transformation. And that these are things that these respective signs express. So Aries is expressing kind of the more physical, surface level um, aspect of Mars. And then, you have Scorpio, which is expressing the more um, what's going on underneath the surface. So, the emotions and the, emotional dynamics, the psychology of the sexual relationship and the relationship in general. But the point is that they're both ruled by Mars traditionally, and thus both have this kind of drive. There's a lot of initiative and power behind this dynamic too. So they're really attracted to each other just because this is another inconjunct aspect. I talked about this a little bit with the Aries and Virgo video. Um, Aries' other inconjunct is Scorpio. So this is an inconjunct aspect, and it shows that, they pretty much have nothing in common, absolutely nothing, as far as, the element, the modality, and the polarity. They're completely different. But there is still an attraction here. So some of the positive dynamics of this relationship are going to be about the passion. So it's going to be about the sex. It's going to be about the emotional stimulation. There's a lot of emotional stimulation that can happen here. Scorpio is a sign that can kind of trigger. So it's very provocative. I don't mean to say trigger necessarily. It's provocative. So it will provoke a reaction from people. And Aries is a reactive sign. So on the positive side of that, um, Scorpio is kind of provoking Aries or being provocative with Aries in the physical and sexual realm. It can be very sexy dynamic, and they're also triggering an emotional response in Aries as well. Aries is not a particularly emotional sign. We are fiery, we are passionate, but we're not a particularly emotional sign. But Scorpio can kind of trigger that emotional reaction, be it positive or negative. And when it's positive, it's passionately positive, and it's wonderful, and it's like, the highest highs and lowest lows, I believe, with this dynamic. But, there is that negative side of it to where Scorpio is provocative, and they can provoke a negative response. It's kind of unconscious sometimes, and sometimes it's very conscious, but a lot of times Scorpio will even unconsciously provoke a reaction from, whoever. So when they're provoking that reaction from Aries, the point is to provoke that reaction, kind of stimulate a response, and either achieve a desired goal, or get Aries to do what they want, or to have them look within a little bit. Sometimes, Scorpio is also about that transformation. So when Scorpio is provoking you, they're also trying to help you transform in some way. So Scorpio provokes Aries. Scorpio triggers a reaction in Aries. But that reaction is not always positive, and this is because, think about the sign of Aries. Aries is reactive. Aries is the warrior of the zodiac. It's similar to what I said about, Aries and Gemini. Gemini is intellectual. Gemini wants to debate just for the sake of debating, but they don't always realize how seriously Aries is taking that, and how it's going to actually turn into an all-out war, because Aries tends to turn everything into a bit of a war. And Scorpio can kind of trigger this reaction in Aries, and Aries is not a sign that you really want to do that to, because the force with which they respond can be immense. My hair's bothering me. The force with which Aries responds can be immense, and it can be extremely powerful and explosive. Actually, I feel that Aries can really bring out the explosive side of Scorpio too. And Scorpio's explosive side can be a lot more intense and far-reaching and destructive than anything that Aries could do, because Aries can be very, again, it's a little more surface level, a little more physical. It's kind of a quick explosion of rage, and then it's over. It kind of passes by. But, Scorpio is more prone to holding grudges, fixed water, holding on to feelings, whether they're negative or positive. So when Aries triggers that reaction in Scorpio, it can be really destructive. And it's really interesting to see, because they are both Martian, and they're both a little bit combative. They can definitely be combative, but it's interesting to see how much they really misunderstand each other, because Scorpio is taking things really, really seriously too, and they are, they're trying to transform Aries, but then Aries reacts with this force, and Scorpio is very Scorpio doesn't understand always that Aries might be explosive, but it's going to pass right on by. And Aries doesn't understand about Scorpio that they might be explosive, but that doesn't mean it's going to pass right on by. It's going to kind of sit, and it's going to kind of fester, or that's the potential anyway, that Scorpio can let it sit and fester and hold grudges, and it can be just really, really intense. It's all around passionate, super, super passionate connection, but passion can quickly turn in a different direction. You've got this really, hot sexual passion, but then you've also got the storms. Like, if you think about in synastry, Mars and Pluto, Pluto being Scorpio and Mars being, Aries, being modern rulers. If you think about this, hard aspects between Mars and Pluto in synastry are explosive and sometimes even abusive. Now, that's not going to happen if the person isn't abusive to begin with, but they can be it can show a very explosive dynamic, and it, triggering each other very easily. And I think that Aries and Scorpio are a very easily triggered couple, very easily reactive to each other. So kind of the trick to being in a Aries and Scorpio relationship is paying attention to those triggers and owning them. Both people kind of have to be conscious in this dynamic to really make it work, because it is so passionate that it can quickly turn sour and it can quickly become more than anybody really bargained for, except maybe Scorpio, because they always bargain for a pretty crazy time. But I feel that a lot of times there can be Aries is the child of the zodiac. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, it can be really hard for Aries in this dynamic to deal with Scorpio, because they're really reacting from that place of childlike instinct. So when they're reactive and explosive, it's like a kid throwing a tantrum. But Aries being the child of the zodiac, there's kind of a naivety, or naivete, however you say it. There's a bit of a naive streak that Aries can have, and it can be kind of like, why are you yelling at me? Why is this happening? Failing to remember that they were just screaming at the top of their lungs 2 minutes ago. Um, and it can be a little much for Aries' uh, childlike nature. And Scorpio can become very enraged at the fact that Aries is more surface level. And I hate saying surface level because I'm an Aries and I know that I have depth. But Aries expression is more surface level. So Scorpio can become very upset that Aries is not reacting the way they want them to. Aries, again, especially with a fixed sign, it's like, a ram running at a brick wall trying to break it down. And Aries just doesn't always want to cooperate. Aries is very independent, and Scorpio has that deep emotional nature. So Scorpio can become very angry when Aries is behaving more surface level, or Aries storms off in a fit of rage, wanting to be alone because they just can't deal with Scorpio's antics. And that can be really hurtful to Scorpio as well, because Scorpio desires that, closeness. Um, Failing to realize, again, this misunderstanding that can happen with them, failing to realize once again that that doesn't mean Aries doesn't love them or that they are abandoning them. They're just being the children of the zodiac that they are. And Scorpio may then react with some emotional manipulation, um, any kind of manipulation, really. Scorpio can be a very manipulative sign, and that can feel really heavy to Aries. So, yeah, overall, it's going to be very, very passionate, for better or worse, and it's going to be really important, really, really important with this dynamic to stay conscious and own your own stuff. Understand that what is being triggered in you isn't necessarily um, reality. It's not necessarily what's really going on, but it is pointing to something that's happening on the inside. So anyway, that was my analysis of Aries and Scorpio. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and have a great day.